NerdandSon.
Welcome to the NerdandSon podcast. I am Ralph, I am Nerd.
And I'm Connor, I'm Son. And together, this is the NerdandSon podcast, where we do reviews, we talk about how to play, and just how to be more comfortable getting ready for your games.
And tangents galore.
And tangents along the way. The real tangents are the friends we made along the way.
They're your tangential friends?
Yeah.
Okay, that works. Okay. Well, this is your episode, and I hand the reins over to you, my son.
Excellent. So, something that I have been a big proponent of in previous episodes and have talked about is, I sit here and I'll go, oh, well, you should play other systems. You should explore, you should expand your horizons. Don't just play D&D. And then what do? We sit here and we talk about D&D. We talk about Dungeons and Dragons. We have, and now, whatever number episode this is, this was we've done a couple extra, but this is the one where this is the 25th topic. So it was a 25th episode, even though a couple of those
25th topic, and I think this will be our 30th episode when this goes up.
So, yeah. So as that extravaganza, we have, I wanted to do something special, and I wanted to showcase one of my favorite systems. And just from the conceptually of this system, I love it. I love the more narrative, push behind it. And so we're going to get into...
Oh, come on. Your anticipation's killing me. What is it? What is it? What is it? What's it?
That's going to get copyright struck because I'm such a good singer. It's going to pick up the notes. It is the Star Wars RPG system by Fantasy Flight Games.
Cool.
Now by Edge Studios. It's a little confusing, but it came out in 2013 originally, and that was the Edge of the Empire, which we're going to focus on today. And it was discontinued, and then the rights were transferred over to an Asmodee subsidiary, Edge Studios. And up until this year, it was just discontinued. You couldn't find new anything. But then they started reprinting it and having the dice ready, because this has special dice.
Okay, so this is actually just a reprint of the original books of 2013. This is not like a new rule set or anything for 2024.
Yeah, they just started reprinting them this year of our Lord 2024.
Okay, cool.
So, and I think they started either last month or they start next month, something like that.
Okay,
we're they're happening right now.
Okay,
at time of recording, which is the year of our Lord 2024, month of June.
Okay, well, this is good because this is something I know absolutely nothing about. So I'm going to be asking a bunch of questions throughout, so you can see how little Star Wars knowledge I truly have. And
that's okay. I'm an encyclopedia of random, just Star Wars knowledge.
Yeah, so cool.
The only setting I know more about than Star Wars is Warhammer.
That'd be an interesting episode someday too.
That's number 50. That's going to be
okay. That'd be our 50th. Okay.
I think sound off in the comments if you want to hear me explain Warhammer lore to Dad here.
Okay.
So, what is a role-playing game?
Are you asking me or are you asking everybody else?
It's click, clack, math rocks, right?
Yes, it is. Definitely.
Shout out to the very first episode. Click, clack, math rocks. Well, how do you do click, clack, math rocks when there's no math? It's all just pictures.
Okay.
All right. That's the whole conceit of the system. You've got... Hang on, let me get one of each of the... You've got these super duper special... This is not working. Dad, can you put a picture up?
I'll throw a picture up. That's not a problem.
Because I have the picture right there. But yeah, so you have these... you have several different dices with bunch of different symbols instead of numbers.
Okay.
And the conceit of the system, right, is you have your successes, which are these guys right here. You've got triumphs, which are your critical successes. Oh, I didn't grab a Star Wars dice. Oops. See, that's another thing. This got spun off. The Star Wars system got spun off into the Genesis system by Fantasy Flight Games, which is their generic system. That's what it stands for.
Okay,
and
it's not the
same
planet
dice.
creation that you do in Star Trek, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, you got it. But one of the things is that it has very similar dice, but it changes some of the symbols because, as you can see, right, you have like very Star Wars specific symbols here. And so they filed the numbers off and made it. Let me see if I can find one. I can't find one. But it'll be in the picture. It'll be in the picture shown. It's like the Star Wars symbol for good guys.
Okay, so with the dice, you got names on the dice here. You got ability, which is green, proficiency, which is yellow, difficulty, which is purple, challenge, which is red, boost, which is light blue, setback, which is black, and force, which is white.
Yep.
Okay.
Aha! There we go. There's that symbol I was looking for. Right there.
Okay, I see it.
Okay. So, yes. So, what you would do as the GM is you would call for a check, right? And depending on how difficult you want that, how difficult that check would be, you would have a certain number of difficulty die, right? I think the thing calls for up to like 4 for like an incredibly challenging thing, check, right? Now you would then take, let's go with just a standard 2. And then you would go, okay, well, something's going on in the scene that makes it harder. So then, boom, you grab a setback die. You add that, make it more difficult, right?
Okay.
And then they would take their skills, right? And I'll get into the math of the skills later and how it all works out and how it all... But let's say they have... they would add their ability dice, and then some of their based on their character sheet and what things you have, you might have some proficiency dice in there. So basically the pool would look like this. You'd have the 2 greens, the 2 purples, a black, a yellow, and let's say there's some advantages. Maybe you have a specific talent, or maybe you have set something up narratively to help you out. You might add a blue dice in there, a boost dice to help you out.
Okay, so to simplify this, the way I get this is if you are coming across a challenge that is set up by the DM would set some kind of difficulty up on that challenge. Yep. Okay, and base that on between 1 and 4 dice.
Yep.
Or 5. Okay. So without that, now if it is something that's really difficult, saying like dark or something like that, they can add an additional difficulty, and if they do, you would add a black dice on that. Okay, so the difficulty will be set between the purple dice and the black dice. Now, for your character to roll, you get to add your ability. Okay, depending on what character you are, so that'd be a green dice. And if you are proficient for whatever reason that this challenge has, then you would add your proficiency dice on that. Okay, and then any other bonuses, you would be able to use a boost depending on your characters and skill set. Okay.
Yep.
That actually makes a lot of sense after I had to think this out in my head.
It's one of those things. It's like when you're first explaining the system, it's like, this is over my head. It's something completely different. But then it's like pretty simple as... The thing is that once you roll these, whatever you get, the thing is that I didn't go over the bad stuff either, right?
No. We'll just keep it simple right now. Otherwise, it'll get a little too complicated.
Well, no, but here's the thing, right? They all cancel out.
Okay.
So, right, you have successes. Let me pull these out here. You have, right, your just standard success. You have your triumph. And on the boost dice, you have your, oh shit.
Okay. Well, let me ask you a question.
This is the problem. This is the problem with this system. I will say one of my things is that with the especially when you have, you know, two different dice, because I have the Genesis dice and you're rolling them with the Star Wars dice, you have different things. You have different symbols for the same meaning.
Okay,
right?
so it's going to be best to use the same set of dice instead of mixing them.
Well, yeah, but sometimes, you know, if I have a group of 4 people, right, I don't expect them to get brand new dice. You know,
I don't understand, but I'm just trying to simplify this for my understanding. Okay, now here I'm going to ask you a couple questions. What does it mean? Because you said a couple terms here. So what do you mean by success?
Yes, so success is your standard success. You succeed the challenge. You do exactly what you want to do.
Okay.
Right?
Okay. That seemed pretty straightforward, but I just wanted to double check.
Yep.
Now,
then, this is what I was looking for. The winged looking thing. This is your advantage. This does not necessarily mean that you succeed or fail, but it is a bonus. So I always like to use, you're trying to pick a lock, right?
Okay.
You roll, there's an advantage on there, right? That means that, well, maybe the guard got distracted by something, so you have a little more time if you didn't succeed, right?
Okay. Is there a set table for advantage, or is it just up to the DM at that particular point?
It's up narratively. The DM and the players will all together think of things, you know, because it can't just be all on the DM to try to think of unique consequences to different roles, you know.
Okay.
So this is definitely a very collaborative game.
Okay. Well, let me go through and let me ask you some of these questions so I can actually understand it in my head, being a newbie to this. I understand dice and dice games and everything like that. So when you roll it, you have your success. Okay. You've also mentioned advantage, so that would actually give you an additional advantage on whatever you roll. And the next thing I have a question on that you mentioned was triumph.
Yes.
What would be a triumph then? And why would that actually... Because I would assume that's going to be good, and why would that be better than a success?
It is a critical success, right? It is something that it's not... It is incredibly, it is super just great, right? It is... Let me read this.
So it's a crit.
Triumph symbols count as success symbols and may be spent to trigger a powerful positive consequence, right?
Now you're adding even more stuff on there. Okay.
Yeah, it's... Anyway, that's from the thing, okay? Here's where, you know, the interest and, the tension comes in, right? Because as you have the purple die, right? The purple die have your failure symbols. Let me see if I can just get one. There we go. Okay. That's a failure.
And a failure is opposite to your success.
Is a threat.
A threat?
Yeah. I call them disadvantage because it makes it easier for me. You have advantage, disadvantage, you have success, and failure, right?
Okay.
And then the red dice have despair on them.
Okay.
Which is a critical failure, right? As you roll your dice pools, the success and the failures cancel out.
Okay.
The disadvantages and the advantages also cancel out. So as you're rolling all these dice, right? If you get 2 advantage symbols, a success symbol, and a failure symbol, then that's a wash with 2 advantages, right?
Okay, so how would that actually be positive? And let's look at that lock scenario again. Okay, so you did that, you are working the lock, you roll your challenge, okay? You cancel everything out except for 2 advantages.
Okay. Let's say, you know, like I said in the previous, maybe the guard gets distracted by something.
Okay.
Right? You got and you might have a little breakthrough and you're like, oh, okay, I see how this locks works, right?
Okay.
So
you get two on top of each other. So
a boost dice for the next roll, right?
Okay. Now, does a advantage give you a boost dice, or 2 advantage give you a boost dice?
So, I would say the advantage would be an excuse to give a boost dice, right?
Okay.
So in that scenario, one of the advantages would be, oh, you have more time, you have another attempt to make before you're spotted, right? And then the second advantage could be, oh, well, you get a boost dice for your next one. You figure something out about the lock or something like that.
Okay. That makes sense once I'm going through this and everything like that too.
Meanwhile, let's say, nope, that's the wrong one. I have too many dice in front of me. So let's say you get a disadvantage while you're doing this, right?
Okay.
Maybe the security system engages, and so you'll have another negative dice on your next check. Maybe.
So what you're saying is, if you roll all your dice, everything cancels out except for a disadvantage, and then a disadvantage on your next roll to try it again. You would actually have your setback dice as the additional dice that you would roll. It became harder for some reason. Okay.
Yep. And then of course you have your failures where, you fail. So I like this system because you are able to have you could have a failure with an advantage or a success with a despair. You can have, successes. You can have, failures with advantages. Any combination of these things can happen so that you have a very, wide variety of consequences that could happen, and it can help shape the narrative in interesting ways rather than you pass or you fail.
Okay. Let me just put this through my head in the way I actually see it, and correct me if I'm wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I see from like a D&D aspect, you roll your dice, you have your D20, you have your failure, and you have your success. You have your critical, either failure or good. Okay, as a DM, depending on what they're trying to do and everything, and the way the characters interact in the story and the narrative, then I can adjust that to be a couple different things without any kind of problem. With this right here, with this dice set the way you're explaining that to me, instead of me making it up based on the narrative and the players and what's going on and all the side conversations, the dice actually more determine the narrative on if the guard walks away, if you find more time, if you figure out the lock a little bit and stuff like that. You actually kind of... The dice give you more storytelling instead of you kind of just making it up as you go.
Yep.
Okay.
It gives you... It's not so much that it, because you can still make up all that stuff with, a D20 system.
Right.
But this at least gives you a direction. This gives you, well, something bad happened, but it's not, a total failure.
Okay. Now, one question that you have...
Something good happened.
Okay.
Yeah.
The question I have, is this a dice roll that the DM makes or the player makes? And
this is the player.
Okay. Does the DM roll any kind of opposing dice?
No. So that's the thing, right? So let's say you have an opposed check, right? So in that scenario I talked about where the player has, 2 greens and a red, or 2 greens and a yellow, because of their proficiency and stuff. And we'll get into that. We'll get into the skills and stuff, because we're going to go through character creation here. So as an opposed role, right, you might have an NPC or a villain or something with a similar check that they're making, right?
Okay.
Let's say you have a lightsaber battle going on, and this is your role for this is your skill with a lightsaber. Well, this is their skill with a lightsaber too. You're going to see how that battle plays out.
Okay. So similar, right? When you're rolling the dice and competing, you're like playing Risk.
Yep.
Where you have your opposing armies and you each roll dice to see what cancels out and who actually wins. Gotcha. Yep. Okay.
Risk is a really good. I've never thought about that one. The other die here is the force die. Okay, and we're not really going to get in. We'll get more into that. But this is one that's rolled, and you get force points, either dark or light, and those are tokens to be used by the GM or the players.
Okay.
Light side is for players, dark side is for GM.
Okay.
And I think we've discussed systems that do this, but where you have tokens where you can change things narratively,
right,
as things go on, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that we'll discuss this more when we talk about rules and stuff. I just wanted to give a very basic overview of the dice system because that is foundational.
I have one question about one dice that we've not really talked about, and that's the challenge die.
Yes. So this one comes up. This one, when they talk, when they give examples in the book and stuff, they don't usually bring this up because this is a very pro player game, right? So unless
for all us newbie simple people, huh? Can't handle the red dice.
But this opens up. You only open up the red die when you are willing for the consequence of a despair, right? Like I said with the example I like to use, which is the lockpick, right? You're not really going to use the setback die or the challenge die. You're not going to use the red die unless there are high tension consequences where a despair means something, right? If they're just trying to get through, and not get caught, getting caught is the failure. So if they roll a failure, then they get caught. Right?
Okay.
But, if they are, let's say, hiding from, like, I don't know, like a Sith or something, and they're, or like something like that, something real meaty.
Okay.
That, you still want to have the chance of them failing and having a despair where, like, maybe they get caught in a cinematic moment where, boom, a lightsaber's through their chest.
Yeah.
Right. That's a good despair right there.
Okay.
So.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. High stress points, so like a lightsaber battle, and yeah. Yep. Okay. Do you dodge that strike, or does that strike cut you in half, and your bottom half and upper half separate as you fall down through the air vent?
And then you return in 3 movies and 4 seasons.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's how it is.
Yep. Okay,
cool.
So I shared with you, I don't know if you saw, but I shared with you a character sheet.
I did not really get a chance to look at it.
Oh, good. Well, we're going to go through it piece by piece and like piecemeal exactly what went through and what we are looking at.
Okay.
All right. So I was going to explain this later when we got to the skills portion. But I wanted to explain it now because there were some we ran into questions here, right? So let's say we have a 3 purple check on an astrogation check, right? It's a very difficult roll.
Okay.
So you throw up 3 purples, that's very difficult. Well, my character here, right? So the skill is an intellect skill. So that's going to be immediately, because our intellect is 2, that is 2 ability dice.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
All right. Then, because we have 1 rank in that skill, we upgrade one of those to yellow.
Okay.
That's how that works, right?
Okay.
So if you see for the ranged light, so that's pistol weapons, we would start with because our agility is 3, we would have 3 dice, but because I have 2 ranks in ranged light, that becomes that becomes 1 green and 2 yellows.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, that makes sense.
So that's how you determine what your dice pool is and how easy it is for you to win some of these.
Okay.
So, let's go down the list of everything, and we'll just go through character creation step by step in the as is said in the book. And before we get into this, I've put this together to make this easy so that it's just one piece at a time, right?
Okay.
In the book, it is not like that. You have to go from, okay, I'm going to do this, so I'm going to go back up to here in this previous chapter, and then I'm going to go look over here and look, a lot of back and forth in the book, and I will say that is a criticism I have of this book as well, is that things are just kind of laid out, and there's a lot to it, and it's because there's to make the table simple.
Okay.
There's a lot working in the background to make that work, and
right.
a lot of explanation to say what is going on here, right?
Okay. That would make sense.
It is for how simple the face of it is a very complicated system to make that work.
Okay.
So
but once you get used to it, then you can fly to wherever you need, everything like that too.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's not awful.
Okay.
So, step 1, right? Determine character concept and background.
Okay. And I want to bring up a character sheet here so I can look at the character sheet. Is that what you like? Okay, that'll work.
Yep. And I'll explain why we have done things that we have done.
Okay. That'll work.
So, starting the first things first, character concept and background. Why are we doing what we're doing? What character are we trying to make? Because, everybody has a vision in their head of, their favorite Star Wars character. And I think I asked you this before, and I asked what kind of Star Wars character you would play, and I think you said smuggler, right? Was that correct? Or am I getting confused?
I think so. I'm trying to remember. It was actually a little bit ago.
That's okay. But that's all right, because I went ahead and put in, a generic smuggler, just to be easy, right? We're playing the Edge of the Empire book. That's the other part, right? Side tangent. This game is in 3 different books. One of my issues with this game, right, I talked about going back and forth.
Right.
But because Star Wars is so wide, it caters to a lot of different fantasies, right? It has, pulp fiction space stories, and space adventures and these fantasy space battles with wizards using magic, basically.
Yeah.
And the same token, you have smugglers and bounty hunters and hired guns, all, running spice and being bounty hunters. And then you also have the political intrigue and the rebellion and the soldiers fighting the good fight and fighting the war against tyranny.
Right.
Right? Those are your basic forms, and there's so much you can do in those, and each one of those things could be a game in themselves, right? And you could have your own, you could have your entire RPG career around, one of those things. But Star Wars has all of it. Now, Edge of the Empire is the one we're going off of today, because that was the first one written, and this is Edge of the Empire, right? Okay. It's a chunky book.
It's a little bit chunky, yeah.
It's a little bit chunky. But then you add in, right? Then you add in Age of Rebellion, right? This is the political intrigue in Star Wars, and your classic rebellion versus versus the Empire.
Right. Okay.
Right. This is also a chunky book.
It's a nice chunky book too. Yeah.
And then you have Force and Destiny, which is all your space wizard shenanigans. So you have your 3 pillars in these big books, and they're all compatible together because they're all the same system.
Okay.
But they all have, they all cover the same similar ground and have, different things, different characters and races and classes and everything to try to help out. But we picked Smuggler, and so we are just using a Edge of the Empire.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
So just a peek at like the complexity that is backfilling the simplicity of the actual game.
Right. So, I mean, that's no different than having all the freaking different books and everything I have back here.
Yeah.
You got your basic core rule book. On top of that, you got your Player's Handbook, Dungeon Master Guide, Monster Manual, but then you have your Forgotten Realms rule book, and then you have like your Cormyr setting, you have your Eastern Lands setting, you have your Icewind Dale setting. It's a different book for everyone. So, yeah. Okay, I understand that.
So, it's, but Star Wars does have that difficulty, that difficult hurdle to get over where you have all these different things, but they're expected to play together at the same exact time, right? You have, you're dealing with Jabba the Hutt and your smuggler being, and you're dealing with smuggling and all that stuff while you're dealing with the Jedi and the Force and the Inquisitors and all that, right? I didn't say this is specifically set. The generic setting that it assumes that you're playing in is the Empire. So within, like, after Clone Wars, before Return of the Jedi.
Okay. Sounds good.
Yep. So we start. We have our concept, generic smuggler. So now we get into a system that I really like, using, which is obligation. Okay. So your character starts with you can always opt into it, of course, and you don't have to, but it is recommended your character start with a certain obligation, right?
Okay. So what exactly is an obligation?
We will get into that. But it is something for the GM to determine if something from their backstory will end up coming into play during this session, right?
Okay.
It is something the GM rolls before. So you start with, and I'll use us as our character as an example, because we have, and I'll explain it how we got there, but we have 20 obligation, right? So if I were the DM for our group, right, we would have all of our characters in the group on a percentile table. And let's say our character is 1 through 20. So if we roll a percentile dice, and we come up with an 18, then our obligation will be at play. And it is a way to inject things into the story. So let's see.
Okay, give me an example of that, because I'm not quite understanding how you're injecting that into a story based on a roll.
Yeah, so it just says that, this character's obligation is going to come up. Okay? So let me get to what the obligations are. And I think it'll come up more. You have addiction, betrayal, blackmail, bounty, criminal, debt, duty-bound, family, favor, and oath, obsession, and responsibility. Those are the ones that came up, right?
Okay.
So I picked bounty. Okay. For our character.
Okay.
And so we have a criminal record. Somebody's coming in to try to take us in. We have a bounty on our heads.
Okay.
So if I as the GM roll, and I get within that range, that percentile range, that means that I would have the character, I would have a bounty hunter kind of show up. It doesn't have to be a hard fight.
So this is
but
actually setting up your random encounters, which are not necessarily random, but the random encounter is specified and geared towards a particular player.
Yep. But this could also be like, let's say you have an addiction, right? And you don't have access to your like spice or something. So you might get anywhere from 1 to 3 setback dice on your checks because you're, going through withdrawals. Something like that.
Okay. Now, is that your total obligation is if you have like a party of 4, is that combined for the entire party or do you roll individually?
So that's where I think this the actual thing in here. I'm trying to explain it differently because I don't think it's well explained in here. But that's where the percentile like chart comes in.
Okay.
Right? Because 1 through 20 would be ours, whereas 21 through 40 would be somebody else's, and 41 through 60 would be somebody else's. And we roll that percentile dice and see whose comes up.
Okay.
Right? So that's how you can inject a little bit more personal story into it rather than just randomly figuring out.
Okay,
and it's a good.
Just to simplify it with your percentage dice, and I'm going to change it to a D4. You roll a D4. Number 3 comes up, so the third player is up for a obligation, and then you roll your dice to see if that obligation actually becomes the actual encounter at that particular moment.
Yep, absolutely. The only differences to how you're explaining it is you would do this before, like in prep.
Right.
In prep for the session to see what would come up.
Okay.
And the reason you would use the percentile dice is as you start doing more things and part of the campaign and part of the actions your character could be taking is to fulfill your obligation and to, you could do good things for the law and therefore you lower that number.
Okay.
So instead of being 1 through 20, it could be 1 through 15.
Okay.
So it makes it so that it comes up less.
Okay. That makes sense.
So that's why you'd use the percentile dice, is so that you have that. The obligation is a currency of how often it'll come up.
Okay.
In the game.
Okay, that works. That makes sense then.
So let's talk about this, right? So the recommended amount, right? So I set this up for an imaginary table of 4 players, right?
Right.
And they recommended we start with 10 obligation.
Okay.
So they recommend you figure out an obligation. You start with 10. Then you can add to your obligation to gain additional things in character creation, right?
Okay.
So what we did was we gained 10 starting XP in exchange for 10 obligation. So now our bounty obligation will come up more often in game, but we have an advantage in the beginning of the game.
Okay, so how having a better chance for a bounty hunter coming after you in the beginning of the game to claim the bounty on your head better at the beginning than later on?
This just gives an incentive for your players to have something that ties them more to the game, right? It's a trade-off, right? You're going to have more difficulties in the game for a better start, right? And there's you can do it for credits too, where you can have like a certain amount of credits, right? So you could start the game. Let me get to the chart.
Okay, so the player can choose how tied into the game that they are instead of the dungeon master doing it. So if the player wants to be more tied into the game, they can give up like starting XP in exchange for obligation points to make
no, you're gaining it. It's an incentive. We got 10 extra XP because we added to our obligation, which means it will come up more.
Okay, that's where I got confused. So that makes a lot more sense. Okay, I like that.
Yeah,
okay.
So So you add to your obligation. We did the +10 for +10, but you can do +5 obligation for +5 starting XP.
Right.
You can do +5 obligation for +1,000 starting credits, and +10 obligation for +2,500 starting credits.
Okay.
So you could theoretically start out the game with 30, 40, like 40, 45 obligation because you want all those extra
Perks
benefits
at the beginning. Okay, I get you.
Yeah.
I get you. Okay. Okay, that makes a lot more sense now.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
So that's it's a very interesting system. I very much like it, and how it interacts with everything.
Okay.
So that is why we ended up getting 20 obligation, because we got an additional 10 XP points, and we'll get into what you use the XP for.
Okay.
Right.
Cool.
So number 3 is we pick our species. And
Okay.
because we're a generic smuggler, that means human. Okay?
You mean I'm a generic person? Thank you.
You're a generic person.
Okay.
Okay? And if you look at the notes, you'll see our starting out, we have 2 in every single ability. Our wound threshold will be 10 plus our brawn. Our strength threshold will be 10 plus our willpower. And our starting experience is going to be 110 XP. But we get the +10 because of the obligation.
And all those 2s and everything that you said is what comes standard with your species, correct?
Yes.
So if you pick a different species, you can have different advantages and disadvantages in the different categories.
Yep. And your wound and strain thresholds will be different. Your starting experience is different.
Okay.
Like you can play as a droid, and because you're a droid, you don't have abilities in certain things, and you start zeros across the board. But you start out with a lot of XP so that you can buy, because we'll get into buying your abilities and everything like that. And then our ability, humans start the game with 1 rank and 2 different non-career skills of their choice. Okay? And I didn't remember that until way later, and so we'll get into that. Okay?
Okay.
Next is we choose our career. And I will actually add something to this. So we have our career, which is smuggler. And the flavor text and the little thing is, smugglers are a crafty, diverse bunch with core skills as follows: coordination, deception, knowledge underworld, perception, piloting space, skullduggery, streetwise, and vigilance. Okay? We automatically gain 1 rank in 4 of these skills without spending experience, and we receive a discount when we spend experience to purchase ranks in these skills. So you get a in your career and your specialization give you certain skills where you are able to have a discount on those.
Okay.
When you buy them. So it's a discount on experience to put points into them.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
And then our specialization is scoundrel. And so...
Is there different specializations depending on smuggler? Like if you have a smuggler,
Yep.
do you have different specifications that you get into? Okay.
Yes, there are 3 for every single career. They have made it so there are 3 specializations in every single one.
Okay.
Right? And let me go ahead and show you this, because this is different than what you're used to seeing. Let me go ahead and print screen and put this in the notes.
Okay.
I'm going to put it at the end so it doesn't mess up the rest of everything.
Right, that's fine.
So it's at the very end.
I see that updating here.
So
it
is a talent tree. So instead of getting a list of talents that you can pick, or getting feats at a certain level for your class, you instead have a talent tree to follow for your for your specialization.
Okay. I see that now. I'm looking through that. Okay.
And we'll reference the tree later.
Okay.
But we get a couple of additional career skills: charm, cool, deception, and ranged light. Now, you might notice that deception is on both of those.
Right.
I don't remember if it says it, but I have always ruled it where that means you get a free point in deception.
Okay, so instead of 2 points in deception, you just get a free point.
No, so these are your career skills, right? But because it specifically says, because you can see on the on this sheet, you see how there's the spot for whether it's a career skill or not. So you get career skills from your career and your specialization.
Okay.
So I've always ruled it that at character creation, if you have a double up, you would get a free point in that.
Okay. So with that point, does that just give you additional rank in that?
Yes, that would be the free rank. So
okay,
it would just be a free yellow die on that check.
Okay. Now for every rank, you get another yellow die?
Yes.
Okay.
Now, there is a very interesting thing, right? So see how we have cool with our presence. So we have 2 presents on our sheet. That's the characteristic, okay? And so that means that we, of course, get the 2.
Right.
The 2 green die, right? But then we have 2 points within that, which means that we have 2 yellow die because they get upgraded.
Okay.
Right?
Now on that sheet, it does not show any green die that you get.
Exactly, because they're yellow. Because you have 2 points for 2. Now let's say that I buy another rank in cool, and
right.
I'll explain what cool does, right? But that would be an additional green die, and you would start adding green die.
Okay.
To that.
Is the max yellow dice you get is 2?
The max yellow dice you get is however many points, right? It's whatever the lowest number is, right? So let's say you have a 5 in agility and you have, 5 in coordination, because you can only get up to 5 ranks in a skill. So you would just have 5 yellow dice, right?
Okay. Here's the thing. Okay. Mm-hmm. You said you normally get 2 green dice. Okay.
So yes, because we have 2 in our present.
Right. Okay. So you get 2 green dice regardless. Mm-hmm. Okay. Because you have 2 points in cool, you can upgrade those green dice to yellow dice. Okay?
That's not a you can. That is you do. Right.
Well, I mean that's what I'm trying to do. So you don't have any more green dice.
Sure. I just want to be.
So if you get a 3rd rank in that setting of cool, that gives you a green dice. Yep. If you get a 4th rank, does that give you another yellow dice?
That gives you another green die.
So you can only get 2 yellow dice.
So think of it like this, right? You take the higher number. The higher number is your green dice. So if you have 4 ranks, you have 4 green dice, but then 2 for your presence become yellow. So you can only ever have 2 yellow dice because of your attribute.
Okay, that's what I was asking. I was asking, can you only get 2 yellow dice? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, that'll work.
Because
so
everything
2 yellow
beyond
dice
that
and 3 green dice. Got it.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And so that is how that would work. Where are we at? Let's go back.
So let's go down to deception. Because you said you get a free point deception. And since you have 1 rank as a free point, that's where you get your yellow dice on top of your 2 green. Because
if we didn't have, so if you watch what happens when we, And this sheet was a free sheet that you can find from the SWRPG community site. It's swrpgcommunity.com. And then there's like player resources, character sheets, and it takes you to a Bastion Kane's SWEOTE.blogspot.com. It takes you to a person's blog spot where they have made this character sheet.
Okay, and I'll link that in the description. So
yeah,
okay,
it's real great. Play around with that. It makes things really easy, and and as you're seeing, we're talking about these dice pools and stuff, but it does the math and it makes it so that like as you start putting ranks, it'll take your attribute and it'll take your skill value and it'll tell you exactly what you need to put in.
Okay,
and what your pool is going to look
so that's why I was trying to figure out everything on here and understand the dice that you have. So that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I own Deception, because you have that extra free point. You have the 1 yellow dice and 2 green with only 1 rank. Yep. Otherwise, if you didn't have that bonus and you put 1 rank in there, you'd have 1 yellow and 1 green. Got it.
No.
Yes.
Nope.
No.
No. So you get the 3 points for the agility, right? Because we have a 3 in agility.
Okay.
Does that make sense? So that means that your pool, right? You can. Are you able to click this around, or is this not a fillable document for you?
It's not fillable.
Oh, okay, all right. Because I'm sitting here on my home copy. I'm like pressing buttons and changing stuff.
No, okay. Yeah, I'm trying to because I mean, when I throw this up on the screen, it's starting to look like the basic thing. That's why I'm trying to understand it as I'm looking at it.
Okay, so how that specific one works, right? The deception with the free point. Because it is, you see the the cun off of deception. So that means it's the cunning skill. Right. It's based on the cunning characteristic.
Right.
Our cunning characteristic is 3, which means if we just did not do anything, just like perception. If you look down at perception and it's cunning, it's 3 greens because we don't have a point in it. So it's 3 greens. But because we have a point, because we put a point in it, we upgrade that to yellow.
Okay.
And the reason we would upgrade that to yellow, that gives us the opportunity to have our triumphs, that gives us more sides to have actual things happen on.
Okay. So, based on that, your characteristics, how high can you raise your points in characteristics?
So, characteristics can go up to 5 during character creation.
Okay. So, let's say, and I'm just go through here. Let's go athletics, okay? And that's going to be under brawn. Let's say that you character creation, you get that up to 5. Okay? Yep. So, you would have 5 green dice that you're able to roll.
Indeed.
Okay.
You would start with 5 green dice.
Now, if you pick your career, okay, and you have your skill sets that come with your career, okay?
Yep.
And let's say your career you get is going to be computers for whatever, not brawn. Okay. What am I looking at? Athletics, okay?
Yeah.
And you get that and you add your career, that will automatically change one of those. I mean, you put 1 rank into athletics, that would change one of those green dice to a yellow dice.
You are getting caught up in the free point.
No, not free point. Let's say that you rank up in, and you add a rank.
You put a rank in there. Yep. You
put a rank in there.
So that means that 1 rank, right? You start with 5 because you have no ranks in it.
Right.
And then 1 rank would make that a yellow.
Okay.
One of those a yellow.
So at that point, if you actually rank that up 5 times,
then you would roll 5 yellow dice.
Thank you. That is what I was trying to get at before.
I'm sorry.
Okay. Because I was asking you if you have more than 2, and you're saying no, and I was like, okay.
Okay. So, I was talking specifically about that rank because you can't go further than
Right. So I was just trying to give an example to try
Yes.
to explain to
Yep.
understand. Okay. Good. We got that now.
And of course, with all of the, as you can see on the sheet that is on screen, you can see all of the different skills that are there.
Yeah.
And it's all a lot of the things that we are familiar with, the just with the numbers filed off and the number and the wording changed, right?
Mm-hmm.
So instead of let's see. Yeah, instead of sleight of hand, you have skullduggery, and instead of acrobatics, you have coordination.
Yeah.
You know, pretty self-explanatory. Sometimes it'll be like, oh, what is that under? And it's something that we all know by a different name.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the same. That's the same with your characteristics, right? You up here you have your brawn, your strength, your agility,
Yeah.
your dexterity, of course, your intellect, your intelligence, cunning, your charisma, of course, willpower, which is your wisdom, and your presence. Now, see, this is where it does different, right? The cunning and the presence, because your presence is like your leadership, right? It's a separate instead of having your wisdom and your constitution, right? They instead make that two different social stats and separate those out. So you can see under cunning, you have your deception, you have that's where your perception is, and your skullduggery, streetwise, survival, stuff like that. That's like your wisdom, but it's also where you have your deception, of course.
Okay.
So it's a little bit of both. Whereas your presence, of course, you have your charm, you have your cool, you have your leadership, negotiation. So you can see that it kind of splits it up,
right,
in an interesting way. So it's not just your straight, Dungeons and Dragons with a different name.
Right. Okay.
This is one of the mechanical ways it promotes more social game and more RP heavy focus.
Okay, that works. That makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Then let's go back to the notes. Now, this is where I chose because we have a few choices to make, right? Because you have several skills. You're allowed to choose free skills for being a smuggler and being a scoundrel, right? You get free ranks. I chose... where did I put it? I chose cool, coordination, and we already have one in deception. Piloting space, skullduggery, and vigilance.
Okay.
Right? So this is where I would like to talk about cool and vigilance, right? So cool, of course, it's your under pressure. It is you making a cool check to make sure you don't make sure you're not freaking out. It's
I don't want to freak out.
It's Han Solo having a gun pointed on him and being cool. Vigilance, meanwhile, is your being alert and being being cognizant of what's going on.
Right.
These are so when initiative is called, depending on where you are in the story, you will do a cool or a vigilance check.
Okay. So if you could do a cool and vigilance check and you actually are rolling for initiative, does that actually help Han out so he can actually shoot first?
Because he initiated combat and he was already in a sensitive situation, he would have rolled cool.
Okay.
Because generally how I remember it is if the players are surprised, you use vigilance. And if the players are doing the surprising, you use cool.
Okay, that actually
and
makes
of course that means that let's say you have your like this guy right here, your smug, cool, under pressure smuggler Meanwhile, you have a very nervous, Jedi who's trying to hide his powers. You could be rolling cool or vigilance in the same encounter because
depending on
you
the
could have
person.
different things depending on what's going on in the combat. Maybe, like we just said, you have, he pulled out his gun and shot first, right?
Mm.
And that's kind of what I wanted with this character. Somebody who shoots first and doesn't ask questions.
That works.
So, then we move into our next step, which is to spend our XP. We have 120 points to spend, right? And so we talked about raising our characteristics, right?
Right.
This is where in character creation is the only time you can raise your characteristics. There are certain items in the game that will add to characteristics, but you cannot change something on your character sheet. Your character, spend XP to add to your characteristics. You can't do that outside of character creation. Okay. So it's a worthwhile endeavor to do as much as you can, and then get into other stuff.
Right.
I didn't, because I was trying to have a character that kind of dipped his toes into everything so that I could explain it as we went.
Okay. So,
right?
But you have on here, and that makes a lot of sense, if you're increasing your rank in your characteristics, costs 10 times the amount of points. So if you're going from if you're going from agility 3 to agility 4, it will cost you 40 experience points.
40. Yep.
Okay.
And I almost did it. I almost did that, but then I took it away so that I could put points into different scores and stuff.
Okay, so question here.
Yep.
Now, if I'm on 2, say intellect 2, and I want to make that intellect 4, I have to pay cost of 30 to make it 3, and then an additional cost of 40 to make it 4.
Yes, you do.
You can't just do the skip. Okay.
Yep.
I was assuming that, but I just wanted to verify.
Yeah. Nope, that's exactly how it works. You pay the cost for each increase that you do. So we have a lot of 2s. We're generally very good. You see in other species, you see like 1s or 0s and some things. So this 2's pretty good. You have, at least a fighting chance to make a check in everything, right?
Okay.
So, we have so what I did was I paid 60 experience and got us down to 60 points left, because I raised agility to 3 and cunning to 3.
Okay.
And that's how I did that. And so we have 60 experience remaining, moving into our next thing.
Okay.
Which is our let me double check. Let me go back to the notes. Oh god, I'm so bad at this. Derived attribute. Oh, sorry. Yeah, spending. Yeah, so this step is spending our experience. So then I went into skills. Okay. So how skills work is you spend. It's 5 XP for one rank. It's 5 times whatever rank. So you do 5 for the first rank, 5 for the second rank, but you add 5 if it's outside of your career. Okay.
Okay. So if it's outside your career and you add a rank, it's going to cost you 10 instead of 5.
It's going to cost you 10 instead of 5 for the first rank, 10 instead of then 15 instead of 10 for your second rank, right?
Okay.
That's why your career skills are important. They definitely kind of weed you into this is your skills to use.
Okay.
Now, this is the point where I had remembered. I was like, oh, wait, I forgot that I could add things, right? So for the racial bonus, I picked gunnery and astrogation.
Okay.
And so I
astrogation. I think that's just navigation the stars.
That is navigating the stars. Yeah.
Okay.
That's it's knowing how to when Han Solo's talking about explaining to Luke in episode 4, he's talking about how you have to do your precise calculations so you don't run into, a star or something like that.
Right.
Let's see. So what I had bought, right, was single. I bought a second rank in ranged light because, we have a blaster pistol, we're doing that classic smuggler. And then not a career skill. I put 1 point in piloting planetary because of, you have all these speeder chases and stuff like that. That's your planetary piloting. And so I wanted to be able to do something like that if that ever arose. Hop into a speeder and go off. So that is why that's why I put that in. And because it's not a career skill, that cost me 10 for the first rank. And then I put a second rank in cool for 10. Right? So that ended up being 30 points for the whole thing. And that brought us down to, we were at 60, so this brought us down to 20. Right? Then I went to our talent tree, if you could put that up, and I bought rapid reaction for 5. It's the top right corner. Okay? So that is suffer a number of strain, and add that number of successes to our initiative check. So that is, I didn't explain, and I'll explain probably in the next episode the difference between strain and your wounds. But you basically use up the strain so that you make sure you go first in combat.
Okay.
And then I also bought quick strike for another 10, and that is add 1 boost dice per rank of quick strike to combat checks.
Okay.
Against targets that have not acted yet this encounter. So those work in conjunction, and as you can see, right, you have the line in there, which means that, it's just like any tree, you have to unlock the previous one. So, you need to buy rapid reaction to buy quick strike. And that means that you do extra hits against targets who haven't moved yet. So you're doing extra stuff to go first, and then having a boost to things that haven't gone yet.
Okay. Okay.
So definitely speccing into something.
Yes.
Definitely making that build. And so that was what I chose, and we ended up with, if I did my math correct, because that was 15, we ended up with 5 points remaining.
Okay.
Nope. 15 points remaining. We ended up with some extra points. That's all that's important. Okay. But, right, you get extra points as you keep going on, keep moving in the story.
And then you can buy more talents and stuff like that with it.
Buy more talents, buy more points. You can actually buy into additional specializations.
Okay.
Right? And there's additional costs that are accrued with that. But you can buy into additional specializations, get those perks, make those your career talents, like do a bunch of stuff to make it so that you are all this other stuff, and that's how you would do force powers.
Yeah.
I have not discussed, but and we'll discuss it when we talk on the next episode, how the force powers and stuff.
Okay.
Works. And so it's kind of like a tree. You buy into another system, and you get another tree that gets you those force abilities.
Okay. That'll work.
Yep. So that was everything that we bought here. And then we move into our derived attributes, and that is where we get our wounds as 12 and our strain as 12. Because when I said the race that we picked, human, we get 10 plus. Right, so our brawn was, our wounds was 10 plus our brawn, which was 2, and our strain was 10 plus our willpower.
Okay.
So that means it was 12, the lowest that we could possibly have as a human.
Okay.
So our point is to shoot first and not get hit.
Right.
Next, it has you determine motivation. right?
Okay.
So again, this is another way that it tries to have a more role-play, story-driven aspect where you not only have your obligation, but you have your motivation, where your obligation is what is extrinsically happening. You have bounty hunters after you, but the motivation is what your character wants, right?
Right.
I did not pick anything for this character because I was just making a generic character. But this is, I also think that not getting caught is a good motivation.
Yes.
Right? So, that is, this kind of works as the inspiration, right? I know how you like, if somebody does a really good role play, you'll give them inspiration or extra XP, right?
Correct.
This is how this works too. So this is if they work in their motivation into their role play and do a good job, you give them additional XP.
Okay.
And that's what this is for, right? So nothing crazy, your standard character stuff. Then you have, of course, your gear and appearance. This is where you figure out what you look like, what you have, and it gives you 500 credits to start with.
Okay.
That's your base level of credits. It buys you nothing.
Nice.
You don't get shit. As you can see, I bought a blaster pistol for $400 for credits, I'm sorry, and a handheld comlink for $25. $425 gone. I didn't get any armor. The cheapest armor is $500, so you wouldn't be able to get anything else. You'd be punching people.
Okay.
And of course I used as you can see in the notes, I have my favorite blaster pistol, the DE-10. And that's my favorite blaster pistol. It's the one I want if I ever do a Star Wars cosplay. And it's a good one.
Okay.
Then we have the ship. Okay. So
but you have 75 credits. Can't buy a ship for 75 credits.
So actually, this is with the crew, with your whole party together. They give you like 3 options, okay, for ships, and they're just like, oh, you can pick one of these, and that's fine. Or you can pick one in the back of the book where they have all of the stats for all the ships. That is 120,000 credits.
Okay.
Right. The one I love, and so I bend the rules a little, is my YT 2400 freighter. It's a good Star Wars ship. It's a good one. And that's what I would use, even though it's a little bit more expensive.
Okay.
I would see if I could, if I were playing and I wanted that, I would see if I could add a little more obligation or something to my character to see if I could eke that by.
That's fine. And what's the cost on that one?
It was like 130,000.
Okay.
So like you're just like right above the cutoff point. So
yeah.
So yeah, that is, and it was at this point that I was like, oh wow, we're gonna have to explain combat, we're gonna have to explain starship combat and how all that works. We're gonna have to explain how the ranges work, the HP of every, like, right. There's a lot more, and then we haven't even gotten into the other systems, right? Obligation is only in Edge of the Empire. Right?
Right.
So you have obligation in this one where you can get extra stuff for it. You have morality and like your light and dark side points that you have in this one. And then you have your duty that you have in this one. Haha, I said duty. And those are all pretty much the same thing, the same role. They work the same way, but they're different. So you could have a character with, like, you could start out at a ridiculously high all of it, and have, like, you could be decked out in a bunch of stuff. your shit's going to come up a lot. It's going to be a scatterbrained plot, but you're going to have a lot to do. And there's going to be a lot of plot threads.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of interconnected systems that allow you to have an interlocking and complex story going on for a narrative campaign that can be very engaging.
Okay.
And so it has all the pieces there, and that's what I love about it. It gives you all the tools necessary to make a great story.
Okay. Oh, cool.
So
I have learned.
I forgot one thing. The donjon .bin that we always talk about, for character. It has a Star Wars name generator on it.
Oh, nice.
And that's how I got that. That's how I got the name of this character.
Okay. Well, I'll put the link to the character sheet. I'll put all those links in the description and everything below. And also for the donjon name generator too. So, yeah, cool.
Yep. So that was the basic how the dice pool works and the character generation and how that all works. So
that wasn't that overly too terrible. I just needed some clarification, but
absolutely,
I'd have no problem doing that.
It's one of those things like when you're first like, oh, there's no numbers on this, it does require some explanation before you goes, oh, okay.
Yeah, but if you played any other kind of games before, like Hero Clicks or Heroescape.
Yep.
So where you're offsetting everything that you're doing, and it's not that hard of a concept to get. So
exactly, and that's where when we start explaining it, and when we get into combat and we run through that, and you see all the setup we've done today, explaining everything, and we explain all that, and you go, oh, okay, this makes sense, and then it makes it so that when you're at the table, it all is just pretty intuitive with how it would work.
Yep.
So it's a really easy system with a lot of complexity to a lot of work is put in to make this as simple as possible and as easy to understand as possible. Okay. But there's just a lot of because there's so much information, it's all over the place, and you're working with trying to figure everything out. It can be a bit much to begin with.
Now, question. Are you able to play the game with only one of those books, not all three?
Yes. Okay. So you are missing out on character options, but in the back of Edge of the Empire, it does have 2 trees for if you want force powers. So if you want to add that into your game, it does give you the option to, and it does give you, hey, here's a small portion of what else we have, but here is something if you want this in your game.
Okay. That works. Cool.
So yeah.
All right. That was a lot.
It was a lot.
It was a lot.
And what we're at now, 2 hours, right?
No. We got a good thing. I mean, we're probably at an hour 20, give or take. We'll see. When I do my edits and add everything in there too, but that's not a problem.
Do you want to do the encounter corner save that one for the next one?
Let's go ahead and hold off on the encounter corner. The reason being is I have to get up for work in 6 hours.
That is fair. Yeah.
So
I was going to say it's also getting late for you.
So yes, it's getting late for me since I got to get up at 4:00 in the morning to go to work. So, okay. Well, I think that'd be a good place to actually call it. Okay. If you want to get a hold of us, please reach out. We have our link tree down in the description where you can actually contact us on our social medias, specifically our email address. Please send us a message there. You can actually find me also at 13 Peppers on YouTube. It's a separate channel I have where I eat spicy hot peppers, recipes and whatnot. My season is ramping up greatly. I just released this morning my second garden walkthrough, which covers basically, the first one covered my first 50 different varieties. This walkthrough, I think I'm up to 104 varieties, and I still have a third one to do. So I think I have another 40 plus varieties to add in there that I'm doing. So I don't know my final count yet, but yeah, I'll be working on that in the next couple days.
That's great. And that's
it's a lot.
As the growing season like ramps up and you get more busy, we're gonna have more episodes where I'm leading here. So prepare for more scatterbrain content coming up.
It is all good. And then what I would like, especially when my pepper season is over, I would love to do some live play. So and get that going and everything. So okay,
so subscribe for that.
Yes, exactly. So, but with that, do you got anything else you want to add?
No, that's it. I just hope that everybody listening has a great day.
That's awesome. And thank you all very much for watching. Once again, my name is Ralph. I am Nerd.
And I'm Connor. I'm Son.
And you have yourself a very, very good day.